Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome back to Psychology Eats. So, what's eating you? Well, today I am having a family therapy session. Now, someone in my comments asked me to do an evaluation of the Cryer family, the Cryer Prince family. And so these family is it's one family, but they're kind of split between father and son. And the family, they are big time YouTubers. But they're a solid family, but at the same time, they are sorry guys, they are having some family issues, and it sounds like they've been having these family issues for years. And so I have brought the family in for an emergency family counseling session. So we are trying to get to the bottom of why this family cannot get along. So I made a little chart. Some of you know this family very well. You probably followed them for years. Some of you, like myself, was not aware of this family. So I had to get to know them while watching their videos, reading comments, all the way back 2 years ago to try to catch myself up to where they are today. Because sometimes when families come into family counseling, they don't always tell the truth. So you got to kind of, dig. Some families have their, each family member has their own version of what has happened. So I think I got the general idea of the family and who they are. So here's a quick little. Now, Damien Sr., Mr. Cryer, he is the patriarch of the family. He's the father of the family. He has four sons. Damien Jr. is the Prince family. He's the Prince family, him and his wife Bianca. And then Damien Sr. has a girlfriend named Erica, or his baby's mother, named Erica, loved by Erica, and she also has a big channel. So they are all, they kind of go between each other's channels, and they do mukbangs, they do pranks on each other. But when they're not doing that, it sounds like they're fighting. They're having now. Some people in the comments say it's all made up. It's made for show. That it's staged fighting. And some of it could be. Some of it could be. But I really do believe they have some real family issues that they need to address. So I'm going to start with the father, Damien Sr. So he has four sons, and he has a new baby with Erica, who is 22 years. They have a 22-year age difference. So he's in his 50s and she's 28. And so they have had so many issues that I'm actually going to do a separate, I will do a separate session with them. Separate. Because their issues are their own issues. But we're going to look at Damon Jr. and Damon Sr. and why these two come at odds with each other. Now, the family has they have a documentary, and in that documentary, I'm looking for my tea. In that documentary, they gave a lot of background information on the family. And so I was able to gather some of the family history, which is important when you're doing a family session. So Damon Jr. was not raised in the same home as his father. He was actually raised with his mother and stepfather. And it sounds like it wasn't the best environment because Damon Jr. and his older brother, who I believe now is deceased, um, would get into fights with the stepfather. And so when Damon Jr. was about 15, 16, there was a major altercation in the home, and Damon Jr. was stabbed by the stepfather. Now, they had the stepfather give his recollection of what happened, and it struck me that the stepfather kind of was laughing through the whole situation. Damon Jr., as a result of that fight, Damon Jr. was removed from the family, him and his brother, and they went into foster care. Now, they had a relationship with their father, but their father said that he wasn't able to get the children because he had a prison record. Now, I'm not too sure about that. I worked with children's services for a long time, and I don't know if that's a reason why a father wouldn't be able to get his own children. So I'm skeptical about that, Damon Sr. But if that happened, okay. The bottom line is that as a result of this fight between the stepfather, Damon Jr. was and his brother was sent into foster care, and at that point in his life, I'm sure he felt abandoned. And so I know he has abandonment issues from his mother and his father. Because what I believe probably happened is that the county went to the mom and said, "You have to make a decision. Your children cannot be in the same home with your husband. So you either going to take your children back or you're going to take your husband back." And it sounds like she took the husband over her children, which which is why the boys went into foster care. And so they stayed in foster care for a couple of years. And during that time, I'm sure their relationship with their father was damaged in a way because they felt abandoned. But I'm going to talk more about Damon Jr. because that's who, he talked about that in his documentary. And even to this day, now that happened, many years ago, but in recent videos when he's gotten upset with his dad, he will bring up stuff like that. He will bring up, you didn't raise me, because those issues are still with him. And so I guess, after he emancipated himself out of foster care, and then he did go and live with his father. But it sounds like it didn't work out too well. He didn't feel wanted because his father was in the house with he was married to another lady, and he was raising her kids. And so Damon Jr., I believe, has brought up that, like, you raised this lady kids, but I was in foster care. So that is a huge issue between them. Even if they've never talked about it, that's an underlying reason why they have these big explosions within the family. Damon Sr. also has a 12-year-old son, Davion, I believe. He's another subject. Davion is too much. He's another subject. And so we could talk about him later and his relationships with everyone within the family. Now, Damon Jr. and Bianca seem to be a solid couple. I did have one little concern that I would want to talk more about from her, is that she says that she was pregnant at 17 with Damon Jr.'s baby. And if I got my timeline right, Damon Jr. would have been in his 20s. And she was only 17, and they met when Damon Jr. was a manager at Little Caesars, and she was a teenage girl working there. So even though, they weathered that storm and they're together and they're happy and they have children and they have a good life, I was a bit about her background as to how that all took place. And like I said, we lost them. Okay. Erica, who is, very young in comparison to Damian Cryer. And they have this really up and down relationship that we can talk about later. But as far as this family therapy session goes, I'm going to say that Damon Jr. needs to express to his father how it felt when he was in foster care, how it felt to be separated from his family. And talk about to your father, do you blame him? Do you forgive him? Where are you in your feelings when in regards to that time period in your life? Um, and while they are Damon Sr., while Damon Jr. is expressing this to you, I want you to zip your lips because he's a talker. And he's also, from what I can see, he doesn't he will overtalk Damon Jr. And then Damon Jr. is not going to be able to express how he really feels because I don't think Damon Sr. wants to hear that truth. So I'm going to say they both need to go in treatment together, and Damon Jr. be allowed the chance to talk about what those feelings were for him when he was in foster care. So that's it for this first session. That was a lot. So tell me in the comments, did I miss anything? Is there other issues that you found within the family that need to be talked about? And if there is, I will bring these people back into therapy. I will bring them back in my office and we will go deeper. But for now, that's it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And let me know in the comments, who else do you want me to diagnose? Thank you.